So this is so cool. I've researched Gail a little bit. I went on the internet and I found all kinds of stuff. And I have to tell you that when we were talking before the meeting started, we really demonstrated pretty much a lot of what she's going to talk about, and that is compassion for other people and connectivity. And so I did that. So anyway, um, on her website, she had a sentence that I think really very clearly says what she's about on a general level. And it's this: I'm so glad you stopped by. You've found a community of like-minded people who are open to discovering that in any moment, it's possible to be happy and free. With that positive welcome, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Gail Brenner. She's a psychologist and she's the author of at least 2 books. And she is going to help us understand and develop a spiritual path of conscious relationship with ourselves and others. And that really boils down to, she's going to show us that we need to be aware of and become familiar with how our conditioned patterns, the young parts of ourselves, show up so that we can be fully conscious in our relationships with others now, and especially our relationship with ourselves. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Gail, and I'm looking forward to getting to know her, and I know you will too. So sit back and relax and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Susie. Very sweet. I came about 10 minutes early and was listening to the chatter back and forth, and I feel like we're all together in the living room and just being together. So it's beautiful. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm thrilled to be here with you to talk about this really important, juicy topic of relationship. So let's start by checking in with yourself and see what you're bringing here to our meeting today. Because as we start right now, we're in relationship with ourselves and each other, even here on Zoom. So it's not just me, you might be focusing on me and what I'm saying, but we're all here and we create a space together where we connect and relate, and we want to bring consciousness to what that's like for each of us today. So just check in for a moment. You might even close your eyes just for a second and just see like what's happening in your inner experience right now. You might notice some bodily sensations or emotions, some questioning in your mind. Maybe you're bringing in something from your day or something that's been weighing on you or bothering you. Maybe there are some young parts of you that are also here today. So as best as you can, see if you can find a friendly relationship with what you're experiencing right now. I think we all know what it's like to have a harsh relationship with ourselves. We judge ourselves. We tell ourselves we're doing it wrong. We avoid our feelings. We judge other people. We all know how to not be compassionate to ourselves. But just for now, right now, just want to invite you to explore, like, how can you have a curious and open and friendly relationship with whatever you're noticing right now? Even the judgments, it's like, oh, that's just the judging mind. That's okay. If you notice physical sensations, maybe some tension or some energy, anxious energy in your body. So a friendly relationship with that means just giving it a gentle hello. Hello, anxiety. Hello, sadness. Hello, fear. So we're doing something absolutely revolutionary here by bringing our attention into our own experience. First of all, to know what's here. If we don't pay attention to ourselves and our inner experience, we're just kind of out there in the world, projecting it everywhere, bringing it into our relationships. And we're not conscious in our lives. So I found in my own life how essential it is, as much as possible, it's not 100%, but as much as possible to stay connected, to know what's happening with you, especially in relationship. And to honor what's here. So if there are feelings here, familiar feelings or difficult feelings, instead of judging or pushing away or trying to figure it out, just for now, just for this moment, just give a gentle, heartfelt hello to what you're experiencing. And for some of us, it may be difficult what we find. So being very compassionate and knowing that all of us are here together, almost 200 people here right now, holding space for ourselves and each other. So maybe just a little bit, you can let yourself relax into our relational field here right now. You are held here in love and acceptance and care. And we are holding each other in that same field where everything is welcomed. So feel your feet on the floor. Feel grounded in your seat. As much as you can, have a sense that you have a right to be here right now. And then whatever that might bring up for you, just see if that can be here also. If you're here, you absolutely have a right to be here. So grounding in your seat, chest open, spine tall, just feeling yourself here. And just see what that feels like to you. And I always like to put one hand on the heart and one hand on the belly and take a couple of breaths. And knowing we're all doing that together. Great. And then when you feel ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. And just be gentle with yourself. When we open our eyes, there's a lot of visual input all of a sudden. So just take a look at other people on the screen. Maybe pick a couple of people and just take a moment to really connect. I know we're on Zoom, we're not actually making eye contact, but just connect with one or two people and see how that feels to you. Because that's where we find intimacy in our relationships, when we connect from our authentic selves. So to even do that, we have to know our authentic selves and be willing to be honest with ourselves. So as best as you can, feel into what's authentic for you right now, and know that that is held here in our space together. And this is the foundation for a healthy relationship. When we show up as we are in our vulnerability, with our feelings, with our self-compassion and other compassion. It's the beginning of healthy, intimate, connected relationship, which I know is what we all want. We love that. I know I do. So I'm sure we all also know that this isn't always the way that we are in our relationships. For some of us, we bring in all kinds of history and patterns and challenges that affect how we show up in our relationships. So I want to talk about that today. And I want to talk about it with great compassion. We all have patterns that we bring into our relationships. And examples of patterns are people pleasing. So just check in. Are you a people pleaser? Do you seek approval from other people? Like, what is your pattern of relating? Are you afraid and you withdraw? Are you aggressive and you try to control? Do you hide? Are you trying to always get something, coming from a space of feeling empty inside? So just check in and see what of those patterns, and maybe other ones, blaming others, feeling like a victim. These are other kinds of patterns that we can bring to our relationships. And it's really important, if we want this path of conscious relationship, which is a beautiful spiritual path. There are many ways to express a spiritual path, but this is one of them, to know what patterns we bring into our relationships, and to know those patterns really well, and to have great compassion for them. We all have them. You're not special just because you have some kind of conditioned pattern that you bring to your relationships. We all have them. Mine tend to be withdrawing. And I know lots of people tend to be people pleasers. Yeah, whatever it is, it's just human to have that. But it is essential, if we want to be healthy and authentic in our relationships, to know what those patterns are. And when we explore them, we do that from a place of great self-compassion. Because these deeply held patterns that I'm mentioning here, they come from situations, relationships that we were in very early on in our lives. So the phrase that's often used for that is early trauma. So to know how we are now and why we are the way we are, it's been really useful to go back earlier into our lives and take a look at what is the origin of the patterns that we hold now that we're bringing into our relationships. And this is a very tender exploration that I invite you to do. There's a large group of people to really take care of yourself. If anything that I'm saying doesn't resonate or overwhelms you, or it feels like it's too much, totally back off and take care of yourself. And just do what I'm offering, just as much as that's available for you right now. So that's a lot of self-care you bring to this exploration. So these kinds of patterns, like people pleasing and withdrawing and controlling, they come from very early on in our lives. And these kinds of patterns come from those relationships that we had early on in our lives. So as difficult and painful as it can be, it's really helpful to get a handle on what happened back then and how you reacted to that leads you to be the way that you are now in your relationships. So an example, someone that I worked with a long time ago, it was a very scary environment that she grew up in various ways. And her strategy as a little kid, which was a very intelligent strategy, was to go into her room and empty her clothes out of her drawers and then put them back in a really organized way, and empty them again and put them back, organizing that. So that was a beautiful example, an intelligent example of a young girl trying to keep control over something when she didn't feel like she had control. So maybe you can think back to something you did, a way of hiding, a way of seeking support, a way of somehow minimizing yourself so that you could feel safe in the environment that you were in. And what are the effects on you? For most of us, we come away, and this is very true in my early upbringing as well, come away feeling unseen and unmet. So here we are in these beautiful, innocent children, capabilities, our potential. This is how we come into life. And depending on the environments that we end up in, we need to somehow contract ourselves or squash ourselves or hide from ourselves so that we can be accepted and feel safe in the environments that we're in. And that whatever we do to feel safe and whatever beliefs we've developed from that time early on in childhood, if we don't examine these beliefs and these patterns, this is what we bring to our adult relationships. A common example is feeling inadequate. Like, how many people here have ever felt inadequate in your life? Yeah, very common feeling. And if we trace back to understand, like, where did that come from? Because it's not the truth. The truth of you is not that you're inadequate. It's just a mindset that somehow you've learned to believe about yourself. And maybe someone gave you information about yourself that led you to believe that you're inadequate. It's absolutely not the truth of you. It's a conditioned pattern. It's something that we learn early on in life as a result of our relationships. So if we have that pattern, if in adulthood, as we come into adulthood, that's going to lead us to hide, to people please, to seek approval, to carry out these patterns. So in exploring these patterns, we bring a great deal of compassion to ourselves, to understand how it is that we end up in the relationship patterns that we have now in adulthood. And these patterns that we come up with and strategies as little kids that we come up with, they're very intelligent. They really served a purpose at some time. So if you're someone who hides or people pleases, that had a really important role in your life at one time. So good for you for coming up with whatever strategy you came up with so that you could survive in your childhood. But at some point, when we bring these same strategies into adulthood, they just don't work anymore. We start to grow. We start to want more out of our lives and our relationships. We want to show up more as our full selves. So let's take a look more specifically about what a pattern is. So let's take people pleasing as an example. Any pattern that we have has three components to it. One is how we feel in our bodies. So let's say you're a people pleaser and you're in an interaction with someone and you're trying to get something from them. So already you've left yourself and you're out there in the world trying to be met and seen in this strategy that you're playing out. So in any pattern, there's going to be some kind of physical sensations in your body, some contractions, some heaviness, maybe a sense of frozenness in your body. And just check in right now. Just get a sense like what's alive in your body right now? What sensations are here? Just with curiosity, just to know. It's very useful to get used to coming back to the body and just knowing like, oh, what's happening in my body right now? Like sometimes I'll realize like, oh, I'm clenching my hands. That's a time to take a breath and just see if there's something that I need to address around that. So physical sensations is one part of a pattern. Another part is the emotions that we feel. So first, if we're in the position of trying to get some attention or approval from someone out in the world, the emotions might be fear or sadness or a sense of lack or maybe a sense of shame or some kind of emptiness that we feel inside when we're out there in the world trying to get that filled up. So if we don't look within and honor what's happening within ourselves, then we're just playing it out and projecting it out into the world. And that's why our relationships keep showing up in the same way over and over and over. But when we realize like, oh, there's fear here. There's a fear I'm not going to be seen. There's a fear that I'm not going to be met. Then we can bring compassion inward toward ourselves with great understanding and accept like, that's the feeling that's here right now. And we can take care of that within rather than projecting that out onto our relationships. And then the third component, so first is physical sensations. Second is the emotions that we feel. And third is the thought patterns. So thoughts can be anything. So I'm not good enough. Thoughts can be judging ourselves, judging other people. Mindsets, no one's going to love me. No one's going to accept me. I had a bad childhood and that's how it's going to be forever. I got a bad lot in life. And these are common thoughts that we have as humans. But the issue is if we recognize what those thoughts are, we have the choice whether to believe them or not. So just because a thought appears in your mind doesn't mean that you have to believe it. It may be a habit that you believe it. That's very common. But just because a thought appears in your mind doesn't mean that you need to believe it because it's conditioned from your past. So maybe someone told you very negative things about you, and then therefore you decided to somehow you think negative things about yourself. That doesn't mean at all that those things are true. If someone told you negative things about yourself, then you might want to question, like, oh, what was going on with that person that they needed to say those things? So there's always a way to investigate our thoughts so that we can understand that they're not true to describe who we are. We might think they are, we might believe them, we might wear those beliefs like they're, they're what we enter the world with. But when we see what our thought patterns are, we can see also that we have a choice as to whether to believe them or not. So just take a minute to reflect. Like, what are the beliefs that you hold about yourself that you bring into your relationships? What are the beliefs that you hold about other people? I'll never get what I want. These people are messed up. I don't like them. I don't like what they're doing. I want them to stop what they're doing. A very common dynamic is, I want you to stop what you're doing so I feel better, right? Does that happen to anyone? You want to control other people. You want to tell them to change so that you feel better. It doesn't work. But what does work is to recognize, I have a feeling right now that's uncomfortable. And I'm going to just bring that loving attention, compassion, self-compassion to that feeling that I have right now. Because the feelings that you have are your own responsibility. So you can begin to see how much this path of relationship is a path of consciousness, of being more conscious in our lives. And just also reflect for a moment, like when you're not conscious of all of this going on in you and you're in relationship with someone, like how do you play that out? What are your triggers? What do you do when you get triggered? Fly off the handle, leave the room, disappear inside. Yeah, all of these are opportunities for great compassion for ourselves. A lot of people feel fear when they're in interaction with someone else. Just see for a minute if that's you. And if there's fear, how do you play that out? Like, what do you do to help yourself and support yourself to deal with that fear? And one of the things that we can do is, again, just to recognize, like, there's fear here. Yeah, for many, many years, I had so much fear in all kinds of situations, including my interactions with people, but I didn't realize it. And I would try to control things and disappear, and I had a lot of chaos in my relationships. And then I actually went on my first meditation retreat and saw all the stuff that was going on inside of me that I hadn't realized before. And it was very eye-opening to realize how much fear was running in me that was causing problems in my relationships and lots of places in my life. So it was a great opening for me to recognize, there's so much fear here. And then I was able to really learn how to bring resources to that fear so that I could take care of it within, so it didn't play out so much in my life. And that's been over years, decades actually, an amazing path of freedom to realize, like, I can take care of the fear within and I don't have to play it out in my relationships. And one possibility is just to be vulnerable with it. Like to say, wow, I'm afraid. I'm realizing I feel really scared right now. It's beautiful to be able to be vulnerable with ourselves, and then perhaps when the situation is right, with other people as well. So in this exploration of what is our present moment experience when we're in an interaction with someone and we recognize what's going on with us, it's really helpful to bring resources to our experience, to do things, to bring strategies to our experience that supports us. And one strategy that I love is very simple. It's something we're all doing all the time, and it's the breath. So just taking a conscious breath, like just saying, I'm in a hard moment right here. There's a lot of agitation in my body. I'm recognizing that I'm triggered. I'm scared. I'm ready to react, to say something to someone. And one thing that's really helpful to do is to take a breath, like, okay, just to come back to yourself, to ground yourself, to kind of do a reset so that you can come forward again with a little bit more presence, a little bit more consciousness. And another resource, and these are ways to ground yourself in your present moment experience, is just to focus for a second on what your senses, what information you're getting in from your senses. Like, oh, what am I seeing right now? What am I hearing right now? What am I tasting or touching or smelling? So to use the 5 senses, so a strategy is, what are 5 things I hear? What are 5 things I see? 5 things I taste or smell or touch? And that's a way to bring your attention out of your head and out of the chaos of the moment and back into your present moment experience. Because once you're grounded again, you have options as to how you want to behave. And I recognize that right in the middle of an interaction, that might be difficult or impossible to do because there's so much going on. But this path of understanding our patterns and how they play out in our relationships, that deserves a lot of our attention. So I know everybody here, you're on this 12-step path or some kind of spiritual path to really do some kind of journaling or inner reflection or meditation every day to reflect, like, what are my patterns? Like, to really know, what are my patterns? How did, at the end, if you're doing this at the end of the day, how did my patterns get played out today? You know, where did I get caught? Where did my patterns get going? Where were those moments of unconsciousness? And then to spend some time, some quiet inner time, like, how can I replay that? Like, if I were going to do that situation differently from a place of freedom or authenticity, not with that pattern and control, what would that look like? I'm a great fan of role playing, like just playing out a different way of being. If I were going to be honest, if I weren't going to be people pleasing in that interaction, what would I be doing? What would that feel like in my body? What would I say? Just to let your creativity and curiosity bring you new possibilities. And one resource that I love is support from other people. And this fellowship that you have here, it's a beautiful source of support. And I know lots of people here do other things as well. We need each other, especially in the topic of relationship, because the issues, the problems, the challenges that we have in relationship, we learn them in relationships that weren't so healthy. From people that were doing their best, but we weren't met in what we actually needed to be our full selves, to let ourselves really flourish. So we need to have healing communities and healthy relationships and support from one another so that we can support ourselves on this path of healthy relationship. So I really believe you can't do this kind of deep work alone, and this exploration of how we show up in our relationships We need each other, and we need to practice healthy relationships with each other. So seeking out support, really helpful. So it's a sacred movement when we come from going out into the world to try to get our needs met, or leaning back to try to protect ourselves out of fear. Those are the main movements. We lean out or we lean in. And these are ways that we move from our open, grounded place of who we actually are. So right now, just feel that grounded place within. And just feel your heart, however it is right now in this moment. And from this grounded, heart-centered place, just recognize, like, what are the patterns that you bring in your relationships? What are the challenges? How can we be authentic and then intimate with others, where we really connect? And when we're connecting through our patterns, we can't be intimate. It's like we're looking through a window that has like lots of smudges and dirt on it. But to relate authentically with people, to really feel ourselves and feel them, we need to take a look at that conditioning that we bring to our relationships. It's essential. So I'm very interested in hearing. I've presented a lot. If there's anything you need clarification about, I'm happy to say more about something. If there's something just really resonant and alive with you right now about what's coming up for you regarding anything that I've said, some relationship that you're in right now that feels challenging, that you want to work through a little bit, I would love to hear what's up for you. I want to mention a couple of before we open it up, just very specific kind of interaction skills. One of them that one is that I love is deep listening. Like in relationship, there's speaking and there's listening. So the quality of the listening that we bring to our relationships is essential if we want real and true connection with other people. We need to really listen to them and hear what they're saying, not so much through our own filters, but like directly, like feel into what is this person actually saying to me? Where are they coming from in what they're saying right now? And how can I hear them deeply? What I notice sometimes in just general human interaction is we're half listening and then we're half preparing what we're going to say next. Does that resonate for anybody? Yeah. And if that's what you're doing, you're not actually listening to what the person is saying to you. Yeah. So that is actually a deep practice to kind of stop that preparation in your head and to actually bring 100% of yourself back to the relationship, to the interaction, so that you can hear what's being said. Actually hear, deeply hear. And then you're kind of in the unknown, because when we prepare in our heads, there's a little bit of fear behind that. Like, what am I going to say? Or I need to say this, or there's like an anxiety in that. There's a tension. So if we bring our whole selves back to really listen, we may not know what we're going to say next to the person. And there's that element of not knowing, but very fresh in the moment, where there's true intimacy there. So reminding ourselves to listen, like, what is that listening like? Some of us are and I fall into this category. We're very good at listening, and it's a little harder to break in and speak. So that's another challenge that some of us sometimes have. Just another little tip that I love is when someone's speaking to you to say anything else. Just as you want to be heard, everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be seen. And as you see others, there's more of a likelihood that they're going to be present to see you as well. And that phrase, anything else. If someone's saying something to you and you're listening, and then you say, is there anything else you'd like to share? It's just a message that you're there 100%, willing to take in and listen and receive whatever they're sharing. And that's part of the basis, the foundation for an intimate relationship. Yeah. So check in, just see what's alive for you around anything I've said, around how you are in your relationships, anything that's been triggered in you. See what's alive for you.